When we do baptisms here, we give the parents one of these Bibles that have more pictures than words, a story Bible that will introduce their little children to the stories that Jesus tells. And this morning, we're focusing on one of those stories, the prodigal son, which is, for some, a favorite story. Well, a father was tucking his little 4-year-old little daughter into bed one night and chose to pick up the Bible storybook that she had received at her baptism and open it up and turn right to the prodigal son, decided that he would read this story to his daughter. So she told the story of the prodigal son, the father that had 2 sons. The youngest one came to the father and said, give me my inheritance. And the father gave the inheritance, and the son went and lo and behold lost everything he had. Things were so bad that he ended up a job of feeding the pigs, and finally had a turnaround and returned back to his father, where he was welcomed home. So the father and the daughter, after he read the story, he thought, wow, for a 4-year-old, this is going to be hard to comprehend. And so as he was talking to her, he's trying to interpret what words inheritance means and what this meant about leaving the family and such, and that he was lost and now found. And then he said to his daughter, he said, now tell me, did you learn anything from this story? Did you learn anything from this story? And the little girl thought for a little while, and she said, well, don't leave home without your credit card. You know, that's one of the troubles that we run into when we read a story that's 2,000 years old, that oftentimes we interpret what it means. Let's not leave home without our credit card. And so this morning, I want us to look at this, and we're going to take a look at what it would have sounded like 2,000 years ago as Jesus told it for the first time. It's in the infamous 15th chapter of Luke, which is 3 important parables about loss: the lost sheep, lost coin, and the son that is lost. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, this fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to the father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. There he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he spent everything, a severe famine came place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to be one of the citizens of that country, who sent him, and one of the citizens of the country sent him out to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? And here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field. When he came and approached the house, he heard the music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. And the slave replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound. Then this eldest son became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But the son answered his father, listen. For all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. father said to him, "Son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because your brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." Amen. I don't think there's any worse kind of nightmare for a parent than the loss of a child. I can't imagine what it's like to go through in the sense of losing a child to death. They say that on your scale, that is the most painful death and most painful thing to go through in life, the losing of a child. But those who also have lost a child that has been stolen right out from their very sight, taken from them, and by some mysterious way, I can't imagine, and so I can't imagine for a parent, it's got to be the worst nightmare in the world to lose a child. To lose a child. In the raising of our children, when you go through that stage when they're walking and not talking much, and then suddenly they're off to kindergarten and first grade. Before you know it, they're coming to you and asking for the car keys and saying, "I want to take the car and go for a drive." Soon they're off with friends that you don't know, and they're at the mall hanging out, and you begin to wonder what they're up to. You live in fear. I remember with raising our children, especially when they were young, whether we were at a park or at a mall, at the airport or just in the backyard, how quickly you could go from peaceful to panic when one of them would disappear, when one of them would be lost, and how in that panic mode you'd do anything to find them and to bring them back home. Life is scary like this, and this story for the prodigal son is something that some of us can identify with in the sense of the loss of a child. And we struggle with that loss. We struggle with not being with them. As parents, I know that with our own children, just because you're out of sight doesn't mean that you're out of mind. It's easy to forget that. We always are wondering what our kids are up to. We're always wondering if they're going to be safe. One of the things of being a parent is learning the art of good parenting. And that's one of the troubles of being a parent. You raise them in order that they might become responsible, that they might be able to go out into the world. You raise them to the point that your hope is that they will finally leave the nest and to be on their own. That's the art of good parenting. Coming back on university, there's the electronic bulletin board of Simon Estes is performing a concert with some young people in Waterloo in the sense of roots and wings. You want to raise your children to have roots, values, something to hold on to. And yet you want them to have wings to be able to sail and fly and succeed and to do the things that God intended them to do. So it's a struggle in our lives as parents, in the sense that we are important, so important in our lives that we never forget. We're always worried. Now, what I've said to you is that I want us to think back 2,000 years ago. In the telling of this story, the understanding of parenting and the child relationship was much different back then. In hearing this story, Jesus was talking to people who were basically part of an agrarian society, where children were your investment in your future. Children would grow, they would learn your trade, they would then eventually take over, and they were basically your Social Security, your insurance, as well as your assurance that you will be taken care of when you're old and too able to take care of yourself. And so your children were basically there to be there as part of the family, but it was kind of an unwritten culture that you remained at home to learn the trade and to take care of the family. The sons would remain with the father, and his mother and the daughters would marry their husbands and move with their families. It was a part of life, very much a part of life at 2,000 years ago. It's not like when a son comes up to you or a daughter comes up to you and says, hey, Pop, I'm going to college. I need a car. Give me a car. But this youngest son came and he said, I want my part of the inheritance. Came to the father and said, I want my part of the inheritance. 2 sons, I want half of what you have. You don't understand what that meant, as those people who heard this being said 2,000 years ago, what it meant was a slap in the face. Basically, he was telling his father, I wish you were dead. I wish you were dead so that I could collect the inheritance that would be owed to me. What the son wanted was one of those early quick retirements, that you give me everything I got so that I can go out and do whatever I want in the world. And so what is really incredible in this story, remember, this is a parable that Jesus tells. But what's incredible is that this story is being told that the father gives half of the inheritance. He does this. And the son goes off and he spends it all carelessly. In the midst of spending it all, there's a drought in the country that he's in, and he's destitute. He's doing the worst thing that a Jewish boy could do. And that is feeding pigs. I warned Mark that we need to get our fill of pork before we leave for Israel. So last night, Janet and I grilled pork chops. That is the last thing that a Jew would do, would be to help feed pigs. He'd hit bottom. And what we love about the story is it's a turnaround story where the son wakes up and realizes what he has done and turns his life around and comes back to the father, and the father welcomes him home. You ask, why maybe is this story in the midst of Lent when we're supposed to be focusing on the cross? And what the story is about the forgiveness of the Father and the love that he has. And that we are the children. Some of us go our way and stray from the Lord, and some of us are like the oldest son who came and remain and do what we are required to do. But those who stray come back and are welcomed back home. This is the message of the gospel. And how it is demonstrated is on the cross, that as Jesus died upon the cross, he looked down upon those who had crucified him and said to them, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's a reminder that as we see the cross, we see in it a symbol of love and forgiveness. But we're human. It's easier for us to hate than it is to forgive. Forgiveness is a hard, hard thing. 10 years ago, maybe you'll remember this news story. Recently, this week, it was brought to my attention as one of the victims of this was being interviewed. But you may remember an Amish community. A gunman backs up their pickup truck to a school. It's in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Sends the boys out of the school, bars the doors so nobody can get out, and it would be difficult for somebody to come in. As the girls line up, and before long there are 5 girls, all of the girls are shot. 5 of them die from this, and then he turns the gun on himself. He's a 32-year-old milkman who had a wife and 3 children of his own. A great mystery of why he would do such a thing. He had left 4 notes, suicide notes, to his family in the house. But as I remember this story, I remember not so much what happened or much about this man, but more importantly, the reaction of the Amish community. It was a nickel mine school. And this Amish community, after they had buried their own dead, began to reach out to the family of the killer. When they had the funeral for the killer, there were about 75 people there at his funeral. Half of them were the Amish community. They reached out in forgiveness. They gave hugs, encouragement. In fact, the Amish people began to raise money to help this poor widow and his children out. Maybe you remember this story, because the story continues to live as an incident where forgiveness and grace was extended even to a point where you would be surprised that there wasn't hearts filled with hatred. They reached out to the entire family, and one of the mothers, I believe it was the mother of the killer, had said, their love touched our family, our community, and now is touching the world. See, forgiveness is a hard thing to accept. Forgiveness is a difficult thing to share. This week, Tuesday, we'll be leaving for the Holy Land, and one of the last sites that we will visit is the Holocaust Museum. It is probably one of the hardest things to walk through. The museum right there in Jerusalem, remembering the 6 million Jews that died. And just recently there was discovery that there were not only these death camps in Germany, but they were scattered throughout Europe. So there are probably more than 6 million Jews that were killed. But it wasn't the only Holocaust that occurred in the last century. There was a Holocaust in China by Mao, and a Holocaust in Russia by Stalin. Mao and Stalin were atheists, while Hitler corrupted the Christian faith to be able to turn itself against the Jews and literally kill 6 million people. Turn the faith, our faith, into a cult. And in this last week, we hear nothing but about the KKK, who have also twisted our Christian faith into a cult of hate and bigotry and death. As this will be the 5th time that I walked through that museum. Last time I walked through, I wanted to take my time, so I let the group go with the rest of the group. But there is so much to see that it's overwhelming. There is the history of this Holocaust from 1933 to 1945. As you go each step, there is a line of shoes along the way representing the 6 million people. There are several memorials, memorial to the children. That there's one candle burning in this room with broken mirrors all around, so that when you step into this room, you see the reflection of the one candle in the broken mirrors, reflected thousands of times, as every 5 seconds a child's name is read off, to remember the children that were lost. One of the places where children were put was in the women's and the children's death camp in Ravensbrück. Ravensbrück is famous because that's where Corrie ten Boom was held. When I was walking through the displays in this museum, there was a picture of the liberation of Ravensbrück. Children who died of starvation were just left because they fled. The Germans fled as the army approached to free them. And beside one little boy, there was this prayer that I wanted to read. I copied it from the last time I was there. And this prayer was found beside him. O Lord, remember not only the men and women of goodwill, but all those of ill will. But do not remember all the suffering they have inflicted on us. Remember the fruits we have bought thanks to this suffering. Our comradeship, our loyalty, our humility, our courage, our generosity, the greatness of heart that has grown out of all this. And when they come to judgment, let all the fruits we have borne be their forgiveness. Amen. Forgiveness and love is is a challenging thing, but that's what our faith is all about. This is what this story is about. A father who thought his son was dead and is now alive. About one he thought was lost but is now found. It is about God's amazing grace. How sweet the sound that he would save a poor wretch like me. That is what the cross is all about. Let us pray. Gracious and holy God, we thank you that in the midst of this Lenten season, we have a touching story of a child returning home. That child could be any one of us seeking to return home to be with you. Guide us, lead us, Lord, and welcome us once again with your love. Amen.